members, many non-members. Those of you that are thinking about joining, we'd love to have you join the group. It's a very interesting, diverse group of professionals and non-professionals and allied professionals and folks who are just interested in green buildings and good green infrastructure. So we've got a good program coming up next Tuesday. We'd like you to consider Tuesday, March 8th at 5:30. It'll be virtual like today's program with Wiley Brown. He'll be presenting Designing Houses to Adapt to the Changing Needs of Families, Neighborhoods, Cities, and Our Natural Environment. Promises to be a good program. Wiley does very good events. So the goal of our coffee breaks is to provide an opportunity for the community to engage in conversational hot topics over a cup of coffee in a short 30-minute break. And our theme for today's conversation is designing, wait a minute, no, it isn't. Our theme for today's presentation is the West Florissant Avenue Great Streets Project and federal infrastructure funding. We're pleased to have Stephanie Leon Streeter, who is the interim executive director for Public Works and Transportation in St. Louis County. Stephanie and I have worked together for many years. In fact, I think we first got together in 2008, working together on the Page Avenue extension, which was a American Recovery Rescue Act project. So similar sort of situation, but fast forward another 14 years. Also presenting today, participating in this conversation is Joe Kulessa. Joe, hopefully I didn't mess that up. Joe has been with the department. He's with the county for 20 years, and he's a professional engineer. He is the acting deputy director and division manager for project development, and he's heavily involved in this project. Stephanie's not going to be able to join us for the full 30 minutes. Unfortunately, she's got an emergency meeting with the county executive and the executive team. So it'll be a team conversation this morning. So please join me in welcoming both Stephanie and Joe. And hey, let's get the conversation going.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. I'll just start with the presentation straight away and share my screen. Okay.
It's up. We see it.
I'm trying to get into the, I don't know if, okay, I can't get it into the, there it is. Okay. So if you all, I would assume if you're from the St. Louis area, you're quite familiar with, or at least have knowledge of the West Florissant Avenue corridor. West Flo, that's what we lovingly call it, is a critical transportation corridor in North County. It carries a lot of people. 30,000 vehicles a day travel along West Florissant. If you've been up there, you know that it's very challenged. Not as much for the vehicles, they move quite fast, but it's challenged for the pedestrian and transit user, and quite too many folks that don't have access to the cars or a car like myself. So 13.9% of the residents commute by bus. It's a heavily transited corridor, and 8.2% don't have access to a vehicle. But when you're up there, you will see that trying to decipher the space for the pedestrian versus the vehicle versus cars entering and exiting businesses, it's just very confusing and very unsafe for the folks that have to use that every day. 1,000 people walk to it, around it, from it. And that's quite a large number if you think about 1,000 people, but that is, you know, what's happening up there, because 2,300 people exit and enter the bus system along West Florissant. So there's a lot of activity going on up there. West Florissant Avenue, the Great Streets Project, is the keystone of a master plan process that started with East-West Gateway prior to, and actually had just concluded when Michael Brown had been killed. So it suddenly gained great attention And it was from that the community, including the board at East West Gateway, decided that there were things that we could do that the master plan had identified, and we needed to get going in trying to make that happen. So while the master plan studied the whole corridor from 270 to Lucas and Hunt, essentially, we had to advance a smaller section just because of funding limitations. So we're talking about 1.5 miles between essentially just north of Chambers down to just north of Lucas and Hunt. And so the goal has been with this project to focus on everyone, not just anymore the traditional person in the vehicle, but all people and all modes. So this is an exciting opportunity for St. Louis County to get out of our traditional box. And when we can advance this project, and it's not a when, it's now a, we are doing it. It's not a dream anymore. We hope to improve economic competitiveness, because anybody that's familiar with transportation knows that good transportation supports economic development, and economic development thrives on a functional system. A lot of people along this corridor don't have access to healthcare. I learned as I was going through this process that there are people that spend all morning taking bus to switch to another bus to switch to another bus to get to a doctor's appointment. And then they make that journey back home. So what would take you and I maybe an hour to pop over to the doctor and get seen, and if the doctor needed to switch a visit, he was like, fine, I can make that. These folks that have to take the bus system don't have that choice, and they then say, I can't make that health appointment today. So not only are we providing them better access, but Health and Homes, working with, I believe it's Mercy, is built a clinic along the corridor to provide people the amenities they need in place where they are. We want to improve pedestrian protection, because again, there's so many people that use transit and so many people that walk along this corridor. It's just not supportive enough for people that are not in a vehicle. And that safety is going to be achieved by a number of different things that are not there today. Better sidewalk, of course, mid-block crossings, center medians that are landscape, but provide that buffer between the lanes, that are going in each direction, other street amenities. So it's going to just change the whole community up there, just with the transportation project. Now, we had tried to get funding for a number of years. We've been at this for 5 years. And every time we had to pivot what we asked for, and over time, the project costs increased. But we had to be competitive. And obviously, the less you ask for, the more competitive you become when you're trying to get other people's money. So finally, in 2021, we were awarded $18.2 million of federal funding through the RAISE grant program. That required us to have to reduce the scope of our project, but we didn't eliminate those items. We're putting them on a separate burner, and we are going to work hard to make sure that every facet that we had identified we wanted to achieve will be achieved in this project. So this gives you a visual of what, and this is not even like one of the worst areas along West Florissant, because there are other areas where it's just a sea of pavement, and it's hard to know where the pedestrian is supposed to be versus the car versus the folks entering business. It just is very difficult in some areas to negotiate what you need to do. But this shows you how transformative an area can be when you provide these additional amenities, and just the visual cue that you get from the center medians and whatever, just naturally it's a traffic calming measure. So we think that will help in reducing the speed along the corridor to aid the pedestrian movement. But we are going to, in this project, bring a new road surface, as I said before, lighting, a shared use path. So it's going to have sidewalk on both sides, but one side is going to have the shared use path, which is wider to accommodate not only walking, but biking as well. We're working with Metro and upgrading the transit stops. We have the new signals. We're going to have the landscape medians, and we're working with the cities on maintenance of those medians, but it's going to create a beautiful place too, I think. Access management, clean up all of that sea of pavement, mid-block crosswalks that are going to be signalized, and then ADA compliant sidewalks so there's the multi-use path. and there's the crosswalks, and then the sidewalks that are out there in all cases are not wide enough to accommodate the alternatively abled. So the project was a $38 million project. As I said, we had to reduce the cost in order to leverage the grant. Our raise request started at 23 million. We were awarded 18.2 million. And that was not the only funds that were coming to this project. St. Louis County and the cities of Delwood and Ferguson are bringing a significant amount of money to the table. Private funding, we have $1.5 million coming from Health and Homes. So you combine that with then some the suballocated surface transportation funding that we got, and we are meeting that reduced scope because we had to take out about $5 million worth of improvements that, again, we are going to find a different way, and through maybe effective and good bidding, what do they call it? Practical design, and anything that we can do to try to bring all of those things that we had to cut out back into the project. So we issued our notice to proceed for design to take us through the final design stage of the project in 2021. We will have right-of-way acquisition on this project. We anticipate construction plans complete in 2023 and to get this project rocking and rolling in 2024. This is a schedule that had been submitted to the Fed, so everything's been blessed and approved. We are going to do our darndest to finally realize that transformation in its full completed form in 2026. So that is the project in a nutshell.
Wow, that's great. Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, I used to drive that corridor every day to school up in Umsel. And it was a sea of asphalt back then in 1972. And I'm sure it hasn't changed that much. But you know, there's some pretty good organizations along West Florissant. I think of Emerson Electric, I think of Norwood Hills Country Club. Gee whiz, they should pony up a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, and we've been, where we can, working with, GRG has provided funding. I left them out. It wasn't just Health and Homes. Health and Homes provided funding. The cities provided some funding. We've tried to communicate with all of our partners up there. Sometimes just even promoting the good work and being a champion for the RAISE grant was effective. We've got our partnerships like with Emerson to help us, make some of those connections so that we'd be successful in getting the grant. So it's not that not providing a hard dollar didn't mean that they didn't, contribute, but. Yeah.
They contributed in some form or another.
Oh.
So with a couple of years out there to go before bidding, I'm sure everybody's on pins and needles of what's going to happen with the economy and how that's going to impact all this. Is there any sort of median, any element in the grant that allows you some flexibility?
No, unfortunately not. We are limited to the funding, the 18.2 million that we are awarded. If we see massive escalations in cost, we will have to sharpen our pencils and get creative with the value engineering. I'd love to be able to say the county can come to the table with a whole bunch more money. Unfortunately, we don't. Anything I come to the table with means that there's opportunity cost taken away from somewhere else.
And we had allocated.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stephanie.
We had allocated millions of dollars towards this project. So hopefully, and we were before COVID, we had a discussion that, favorable bids and everything will be effective. Now with supply chain issues and, bidding kind of all over the place because of labor issues and whatever, we're not sure what we're going to find. But hopefully in 2 years, down the road that settles out and we get back to maybe a pre-COVID stasis in terms of construction activity and costs and those pressures that have been on the contracting community.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Things will be different. We don't know how different at that point, right? Hopefully different to everybody's favor, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It's we're respecting your schedule, Stephanie. It's you need to run, I think.
I do. And so Joe will take you through, he knows about the project, obviously. So any questions about the project, and then he is knee deep with me to the level that anybody can be with the infrastructure bill, not knowing a lot of the detail at this point, but he can go through the work that we've done, some of the conversations that we've had, if you have any questions in that regard. So I'm sorry that I have to run. I appreciate being able to speak with you today and meeting all of you. And I hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
So Joe, what's your worst nightmare on this project? How's it coming along? You got property acquisition. I guess that's your next worst nightmare.
Yes. So this project has some interesting property management. If for anyone who's familiar with the corridor, access management is non-existent. It is. This is also the most dangerous corridor I think that we have on our network. It's really bad. But to correct that, we're going to need to work with all the property owners, and we have a lot of effort coordinating with property owners to date. But when we talked about cross access with them before these applications went in, you're talking about conversations that happened 2 to 4 years ago. So those property owners now, when we come and the rubber's hitting the road, and we say, "Hey, we're gonna change your access," they may not be as agreeable as they once were. So that my worst nightmare is that everybody starts arguing over who has the best access and brings property acquisition to a grinding halt. I don't think that'll happen. The community really has rallied behind this project in most aspects. So I think that we'll be successful. But it is going to be a challenge. And I do anticipate Plan A isn't going to survive contact with the community. And we'll have a number of revisions to that access management plan to handle basically the evolution of businesses that have happened in the last few years. It's just a necessary reality of making sure this is not just a safe road project, but we have to spur development. We have to make these businesses successful. We have to make this community successful. And that's not just worrying about, what's easiest for the Department of Transportation to get accomplished. You know, we really need to be engaged with the community and serve their needs. At the same time, bring safety to the corridor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of reminded there are a lot of small businesses on both sides of that corridor, and you're putting a median down the middle. I'm sure it's challenging for them. Got some interesting questions popped up here. So one question from Brandon. Good morning, Brandon. How will you create placemaking for the project?
Yes. So we are just starting that process of talking about the placemaking aspect. So we're looking at ideas for branding. We're looking at we're going to be coordinating with Metro on what kind of feel do we want for bus stops. Rather than the standard, being able to institute the posters and wayfinding signs. We're talking about potentially having kind of call them a marketing pillar. That's probably the wrong word. But places where businesses can post local notices. And everything's on the table right now. But we need to have those conversations with the community to find out what they're interested in and what they're going to find value in. Because again, we're very much wanting to make sure that this community, our final project represents them.
Sure. Absolutely. I'm curious, is there a website for the project?
The website, it is outdated. That is being updated currently by our consultant. So we unfortunately have had to focus our efforts on making sure we're getting the raise grant initial steps off the ground before we could put the hours into updating the website, but that is coming very shortly, and it will be
Okay.
on the St. Louis County website.
Cool, cool. So Gwen Ivister asked, could you clarify dangerous? And then Freddie provided a little information on the crash reports, but maybe from your perspective, Joe, what are your thoughts?
So this corridor is, I think, ticks every box for a dangerous roadway.
Yeah.
So we have high speed. We have speeding problems. We have reckless driving problems. We have a lack of a defined pedestrian route. So even where pedestrians are walking, it's not clear where they should be in many places. We have ill-defined, completely undefined entrances to many businesses. So you never know where a car is going to pull in or pull out of any given business. We have a lack of crosswalks at reasonable locations for the, we know generally that if there's a bus stop, that's where somebody's going to cross. They're not going to walk 1,000, 1,500 feet to get to a traffic signal. And those places aren't safe. It's a continuous open center median, or two-way left turn lane. So there's no place that a pedestrian can stand in the middle of the road and cross two lanes, wait, cross two lanes, and be safe. I'm sure I'm missing a couple.
It touches all the boxes.
Pretty much.
And it's pretty straight too. So you've got an opportunity for high speed as well.
Absolutely straight as an arrow, and the data supports what I'm saying. I mean, this is a high crash corridor for everyone, vehicles, pedestrians, you name it. It's not safe.
Absolutely. So how do the RAISE grants compare to the infrastructure bill that's coming up? Do you have any idea?
In what context?
The process for competing for them and what you have to do to get the dollars.
Yeah, so the typical block grant funds are STP, CMAQ, TAP. Those the level of design necessary to compete for those is fairly minimal. We can evaluate a corridor and produce concepts. I don't know, maybe a couple, 2 to 4 weeks per project. A RAISE grant requires a much higher level of engineering and community involvement. To be successful, we have to show that not is it just, okay, it's going to meet the one need, for STP, we're going to get ADA compliance and a new road surface, we're going to meet those basic needs. RAISE is looking at a much larger basket. They're looking at, are you going to impact economics of the region? Are you going to meet the needs of the community? Have you reached out to the community? Have you worked with other stakeholders? You really have to get a lot more ducks in a row to be successful on a RAISE grant. That's been our experience, and the competition is a lot more fierce.
We have a question from Maud Trost. Maud, you want to join us? There you go.
Thank you. My name is Maud Trost. I'm with St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, and we're also one of the partners working with St. Louis County on this Great Streets project. And hearing folks talk about businesses along the corridor and small businesses and other enterprises that this population that doesn't have access to personal transportation. A concept that we're starting to float around and think about is putting together a loan pool or possibly a grant pool for businesses in this area that may see some impact from the construction phase of the project. And so we're really at the nascent stages of thinking through this and having a few conversations with partners. We're pulling together data in a presentation to talk about the need and what the potential losses may be during this phase. So, and we're also working with communicating with community partners in the area around this opportunity. Very, very nascent, maybe a little risky for me to even be talking about it at this stage, since we're really just pulling together the information right now. But seeing that there's a group of individuals here that are interested in this project, wanted to share that. Emily Andrews knows how to get in touch with me. Joe knows how to get in touch with me. So if there are any partners here that would like to hear more in a couple of months when we have this idea fleshed out a little bit more, want to share that opportunity with this group.
Oh, thank you, Maud. That's a great point. I mean, hopefully this is not going to be as disruptive, let's say, loop trolley, right, to businesses. Joe, want to speak to that? What do you see on disruption?
It will be disruptive to the community while it's under construction, unfortunately, by necessity. We are making sweeping transformative changes, and obviously we will minimize those to the best of our ability. It will be built hopefully in fairly quickly, but it's still a couple of years construction term if everything goes right. And there's always the one-offs of utility conflicts that turn out to be something far worse than anticipated. I don't think we'll see that on this corridor, but there's always risk, is my only point. But no, we're going to strive to make sure these businesses remain successful while we're under construction, and we're going to take measures to make sure that we're not blocking off access for long periods of time and things like that.
Gotcha. Well, it's going to be a challenge, I'm sure. So we just got a couple more minutes of Joe's time. Anybody have any other elements they'd like to bring to Joe's attention to talk about? Here we go. Thank you.
Yeah, in the chat, Freddie, yes, generally the sidewalks and pedestrian facilities would come first in the construction process.
And then Chris also had a question. Oh, go for it, Paul.
Oh, yeah, hi. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Joe, for your time, and Tom, good job. Hey, I've got a question. Are there any new technologies or new techniques you're going to be incorporating? And just what is an Australian right, if you could help us?
Oh, we got Australian rights on this? Oh my gosh, huh? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So let's start with tech. There's nothing new in the field of transportation engineering, but there are many things that are going to be new to St. Louis County. We are looking at, for like trees, for example, looking at tree wells and silvocels and different means and methods to make sure that those, once planted, aren't going to destroy the infrastructure around them, so that everything can mature and have a long life and really look good for a long time. We're looking at crosswalks. You know, we've got different options that now with the pedestrian hybrid beacons that we're looking at instead of just a traditional pedestrian signal. You know, those are things that are new to us. They're not new to transportation. With the Australian right, essentially what we need to do at the intersection of arterials is we still have to move truck traffic. And that's very hard to do without some sort of a yielding right slip lane because of the off tracking of the trailers. So, but we want people to slow down. We need people to slow down. We need the pedestrian to be more visible. So for this application, what we used is an Australian right, which is a median, which has a shallow angle from the road. So when the vehicle gets up to mainline, it forces a very, very slow right-hand turn. It's not the sweeping, yielding right that we're all used to in the St. Louis region. It's going to be a very abrupt, sharp right to force the vehicle to be squared up pretty much with the intersection but it still will allow enough off tracking for those trailers to be able to move through.
Interesting. So hopefully,
It also, because it's a shallow angle of departure from mainline, it keeps the pedestrian in sight. The pedestrian isn't wrapped around a corner. They're right there in a straight line.
well, hopefully the truck drivers will learn how to deal with that quickly.
I'm confident they'll
Okay,
be fine.
it's not a challenge. All right. Well, it's 10 o'clock or a little after 10, and want to be respectful of your time, Joe, for being with us, and of course all of the folks who have joined the call. Really appreciate you joining. Let me remind you of that program again next Tuesday, March 8th at 5:30. You can sign up for that on the USGBC website, the Missouri Gateway Chapter website, which you have access to since you signed up for this. And then I'd also like to remind those who would like to become members or would like to encourage you to join us. Membership is not expensive, and we'd love to have you join our group. So, Joe, thanks so much. Stephanie, auspiciously, you're gone, so thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate the opportunity.
Look forward to having you join us and telling us how successful it is, Joe, later on. You have a great
Absolutely.
day.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thanks.
afternoon, everybody.
Take
Thank you.
care. Yes, happy weekend.
Thank you.
Oh, good to see you, Rebecca.